911, what's your emergency?
I need to get a cop down here. I'm at the State National Life Building downtown. My wife, she's an attorney. I left her working in the office last night. Just came down because I couldn't hear anything from her.
Just before dawn in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, dispatchers receive a call from a man frantically searching for his wife.
When we arrived at the scene, we went up to the third floor into the office. Immediately noticed that there were books and paperwork everywhere. It appeared to be a fight.
We can see this is a very gruesome case, very bloody.
As soon as I turned to the left, I looked down and see a body of a female laying in the middle of the hallway. As I looked at her, I realized that I know this girl. This is Chiquita Tate.
34-year-old Chiquita Tate is an up-and-coming defense attorney, well known in Baton Rouge's legal and law enforcement community.
Have a good one.
Being an attorney who works downtown in the courthouse, we knew her personally. Chiquita had a good reputation in the neighborhood, and she was a bulldog of an attorney. She would give her all.
All the years I had been to crime scenes, that's the first time I stood over the body of somebody that I was familiar with.
Chiquita had been stabbed multiple times. It was like walking into a horror film. At some point, I went downstairs. There was a man, he was very emotional, pacing back and forward. He introduced himself as Greg Harris. He's the husband that dialed 911. It was important that I removed him from the scene so that he could calm down and I can later talk to him.
Investigators examined the crime scene in search of a motive for the murder. They discovered Chiquita's wallet is missing, but other valuables remain untouched.
Her purse is still there. Her computers are still there. The keys to her Hummer, too, are right on her desk. So let's check off robbery. Let's check off burglary. But who does this then? She was stabbed so many times. There's something so vicious about this. It's so visceral.
Whenever you see a large amount of stab wounds, to me, it was something personal.
We noticed long strings of hair in her left hand. So a assailant possibly could be a female. But Chiquita is known to be a fighter. Did she actually fight her assailant and pull hair out?
You know, so we didn't find a murder weapon at the crime scene.
Just hang tight for us, okay, Greg?
Thank you. When we first started interviewing Greg, we asked him what he did on that particular day. He told us that at about 7 o'clock, Chiquita called him and told him to bring her something to eat because she was hungry. He went to McDonald's, and once he got to Chiquita's work, he started to help her organize her office.
She can ask me to come by, help her with the
But you didn't call her, she called you first.
Yeah, she called me first.
Okay.
At some point, she told Greg that she was gonna be working late. She had a client that was coming.
In between 10 and 10:30, Greg said he drove home. He got into bed.
At around 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning, he woke up and she still wasn't home. He started trying to call and she didn't answer the phone. Finally, around 5:30 in the morning, he went to the office and later dialed 911.
I heard that Greg was being questioned. I just understood that that's part of the process, but he wanted to know what happened to Chiquita just as much as the family wanted to know.
So a lot of times she took cases that nobody else would want because these people were rough. They were accused of scary crimes. There's a certain type of clientele that other attorneys are not going to touch.
We was told that someone located Chiquita's wallet.
The missing wallet was discovered 20 minutes from Chiquita's office on the night she was last seen alive.
The wallet was found at 10:30 in the evening, laying in the middle of the street, the area of Gardere Lane. It's a hot spot of crime in Baton Rouge. fortunately, was picked up by a good Samaritan.
When we looked through the wallet, we were totally shocked. Everything was in there. The money was in there, her cards were in there. Why throw a wallet out and leave all the important items inside?
Did someone put it there for some would-be thief to find, use those cards, and put suspicion on a thief, but not a murderer?
When reviewing Chiquita's client list, detectives find a discrepancy.
The secretary was unable to corroborate Greg's statement that Chiquita had a client that she was planning on meeting with the night she was murdered.
In light of this new information, investigators take a closer look at Greg, who remains at the station.
How do you think somebody got into the office?
I don't know.
One thing we do is do a records check to check his background. We discovered that there's a warrant for his arrest for domestic abuse battery in which Chiquita was the victim.
When we asked him about any type of physical confrontations, Greg wasn't totally honest with us about their history. And so it was important to us to find out why he decided to leave that part out. So as we interviewing Greg, we find out that the wallet is found on Gardner Lane. So I wanted to test him.
You know, we do phone records. Your phone records, her phone records. They tell us every tower that you hit.
We let him know that, look, we can figure out where you've been. You might as well be honest with us. So I just asked him directly.
When last time you been on Gardner Lane?
Gardner Lane? I went to Gardner Lane last night.
But that was a defining moment in that interview because we had already locked him into a statement about what he did the night before. He told us that he left the office and went straight home.
And now he's saying that he went to Gardner Lane.
Gardner Lane is 10 miles in the opposite direction from Greg's home.
He said he went to Gardner Lane by steroids that he did not want to tell us initially because it's illegal.
Gardner Lane is a high crime area in the city. There's a lot of drug dealing, so it was possible that that was the reason.
Still, police have their doubts about Greg's story, especially as they make another observation.
As we interviewed Greg, we photographed his entire body. He had what appeared to be fresh scratches in his hand. And we know that Chiquita fought with her attacker, so we would expect that the killer would have scratches.
Greg insists that he injured himself while on the job as a contractor.
We decided to arrest Greg for the active warrant for domestic abuse battery.
Based on the discrepancies in his interview, police secure a warrant to search Greg's home and vehicles.
As the detectives searched the Mercedes, the pair of sunglasses caught their attention.
We noticed what appeared to be the speck of blood on the glasses. This is the vehicle that Greg Harris drove the night of the murder.
Investigators send the evidence to the lab for testing.
When we followed the evidence we had, we felt Greg Harris is the person that killed Chiquita.
Then, a surprising turn of events sends investigators in an entirely different direction.
The police get a call, just an incredible call, about Chiquita Tate's murder.
She said Chiquita was possibly involved in a lesbian love triangle and that one of those people she was involved with possibly killed her. We were all shocked when we heard that. It came out of the blue.
We looked at phone records and we tracked down that number to the cell phone in Dallas, Texas.
Come to find out, the caller was actually Greg Harris's sister.
When questioned, Greg's sister denies making the call and refuses to cooperate.
There's nothing we can charge it with at that point. The focus of the investigation shifts back to the main person of interest, which is Greg Harris.
We also learned that Greg had financial problems, that his house was in foreclosure, his bills were behind.
He knows it's over. Chiquita is the cash cow, and if she is leaving, I get nothing. If she dies, I get half of the community property. They found Chiquita Tate's blood on the left lens of Greg Harris's glasses. and a mixture of their DNA on the right arm of that same pair of glasses.
Early on, the prosecution lays out the motive by pointing out Greg Harris's financial problems.
We have Chiquita Tate's blood on Greg Harris's glasses, and then the wallet on Gardner Lane, and a phony call from the sister about a love triangle and the weave in her hand that was found at the crime scene. I argued that the hair was staged and planned.
Usually, if you're dying, your hand would be clenched with the hair in your hand. Her hand was open.
The defense has an entirely different view of the case. They argue that their client was unfairly targeted.
They said that she was in a dicey business, she had a lot of bad clients. Their argument was any number of people could have done it.
You just need enough reasonable doubt to think maybe somebody else did it.
After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury retires to decide Greg Harris's fate. They return only 3.5 hours later. The verdict is unexpected. Greg Harris is found guilty, but of a lesser charge of manslaughter rather than murder. In Louisiana, juries that have doubts about the original charge can convict defendants of a lesser crime.
Honestly, I could not believe it. If the defense had wanted manslaughter, they would have had to concede that he did the killing, but it was in the heat of passion. But neither one of us argued manslaughter.
Greg is sentenced to 40 years in prison, the maximum allowed by law.
Ultimately, I guess justice did win out because he was convicted and put away. But still, I feel like he should have been put away for the rest of his life.